Okay. I don't know. Sorry. Let me get myself going here.
That is quite all right. If you had it all together, you'd be the only person I know who did.
All right. So we thank you for joining us again tonight, or for the first time. Tonight we are talking about getting ready to work and finding and keeping integrated employment. Oh, no. Apparently I'm sharing the Medicare.gov website with you.
I was wondering where you were going to go, but I trusted you. I knew you had something in store for us. And if you wanted to show us Medicare.gov, I had complete confidence we needed to see it tonight.
It's important.
It is. It is important, but so is housekeeping.
Yes. Yep. Before we get to housekeeping, thank you for joining us today. This is put on by the Autism Society of South Central Wisconsin, the Southern Regional Center for Children and Youth with Special Healthcare Needs, and the DeForest Area High School. We're super excited. We hope that the last few sessions have been valuable to you. We are all very passionate about transition and love being able to present all of these resources to everyone. So housekeeping, the presentation, like Tim said, is being recorded. So please shut off your cameras if you are concerned at all about privacy. Please mute your mics. Tim had stated, and if everyone can put their name in the chat box, and if they are a parent or an educator or a community member. And then please, throughout the night, feel free at any time to add any questions to the chat box as we go along. And Tim does a great job monitoring that and providing links to resources. And then just to talk about our upcoming trainings, in March, the end of March, Tim will be presenting about healthcare changes 2 and youth health transition initiative. On April 13th, we will have a benefits specialist here talking about how to navigate benefits. The 27th, we will have representatives from MATC and UW-Whitewater talking about all the changes that happen after high school in post-secondary education. May 11th, we will have an attorney here talking about guardianship and supported decision-making. And then on the 25th of May, we have a presentation by Family Voices. And it just is gonna summarize and wrap up everything that we've talked about in the last few months. And we always are trying to have family members or people who have navigated these systems before at each session to talk a little bit about what their experiences have been throughout the process. Registration.
That's a great point, Melissa. And I forgot to tell you that next week or in March 23rd, when I talk about healthcare changes, I'm going to have my son with me. 23-year-old on the spectrum. He's going to be presenting it with me. It's kind of much more fun to do it that way. So come on back and meet my kid.
Awesome. So to register for any of the upcoming trainings and to watch any of the previous presentations, if you've missed any of them, you can go to the Children and Youth with Special Healthcare Needs website, and there's a particular page there for these talks that you can find. And Tim will put the link right in the chat a couple times tonight, so it's easy to find. So tonight we have 3 awesome guests. Cassandra Gideon is going to talk about her experiences working in the community. She's navigated a lot of these different systems, and so she has a lot of great things to talk about and great things to share about her job and her experiences. Kristen Erickson is from the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, and she's going to discuss the when, why, and how of obtaining services offered by DVR. And Sarah Bass is the Director of Pathways of Wisconsin Incorporated. And she's going to talk about vocational agencies and what part they play in developing a meaningful work life going forward. Afterwards, we will have just a little bit of wrap up. Feel free, ask any questions, put them in the chat, and enjoy listening. Cassie, you're up first.
Well, life has been really good. I have a new job. I'm a housekeeper at a childcare in Waunakee. She oh it's been really, really fun. I'm all around kids. I love kids. And it's been I'm a little nervous right now.
You're doing great, Cassie. So what kinds of things do you do there?
All right. I clean bathrooms. I clean all of the classrooms. I do 4K wrap, the 4K room. I clean the school age. I do the 3-year-old room. I do mostly all the bathroom, every single room in the building, besides the baby room and the kitchen, most because that's not what I do.
Do you have a job coach that works with you?
Yes. I have 2 job coaches that are amazing. They think that I'm doing an amazing job. They're only with me an hour because I guess Pathways thinks I'm doing doing a lot better with just me, and I kind of agree with them. So
what do you do when you are not at work? Do they help you with any other things at Pathways? Do you do any other things when you're not at work with Pathways?
I used to go to Pathways for a whole day before the pandemic started, because I didn't have a job. So they were helping me find a job there. So it took quite a while for me. I didn't have a job for few months, and then I found this job, which I love. And then so what I usually do there is they take me to what I love to do. Like I used to go swimming, I used to go bowling there, go do some arts and crafts at painting pottery, which I love to do. And I have a whole bunch of arts that I did there. Like I have a frog, I have like a little bowl, and so yeah.
Awesome.
And I think um I love doing arts and crafts at at Pathways. Um I used to like decorate the building. They asked me to like when we came back from the pandemic, I went there for about from like only like 3 hours. And they asked me to make a welcome sign back,
Awesome.
and I made that for them. So
Do you want to tell everybody how you and I met?
oh yes, it was so I it was my first day at tennis at the transition program, and I think I was kind of nervous. So I met Melissa at my transition program, and she was my job coach at first, and she was an amazing job coach.
Thank
So
you, Cassie. Well, you are a hard worker. You're pretty easy to
thank you.
coach.
Yeah, Melissa would always help me with everything. Um, Even if I um was like sad, she would help me um build up my strength. And mostly what the transition program did for me is become a more better um person and woman too, and my parents would agree with that too. So yeah, I miss the transition program. I love where I am. Pathways is an amazing um building that I go to. I miss that I can't be there anymore because I have a job now. So my job coaches are so nice. So and so is Sarah. Sarah, I love you. Make me smile every time that we talk together.
Thanks, Cassie.
Oh,
Right. Thank you so much for sharing that, Cassie. And thank you for coming on tonight. Really
yeah.
appreciate it. All right, Kristen. You share about DVR.
Yeah, hi, I'm Kristen Erickson. I am one of the DVR transition counselors in the Madison DVR office. So I work with high school students in the Dane County area. Um, so just kind of an overview of DVR, stands for the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. We are a state agency. We're part of the Wisconsin Department of Workforce Development. And our role is to assist individuals with disabilities to help them prepare for, find, maintain, and advance in employment. So we provide a lot of different services to help with those sort of employment goals. For high school students specifically, we typically recommend that they apply for DVR services at least 2 years prior to graduating or exiting from the school district. That timeline is flexible, so students can apply as early as 14 years old, just depending on individual needs and when services are needed. But about 2 years prior to exiting is the typical time frame for kind of getting connected to DVR. There is an application that needs to be submitted to receive DVR services, so that can be done online at our website, or you can contact your local DVR office to request a copy of the application. Every high school in Wisconsin also has a DVR liaison counselor assigned to work with students from that school. So that individual is another really great resource and who you'll want to reach out to if you need assistance with applying for services, or if you just have general questions about DVR prior to submitting an application. You can reach out to your office to find out who that counselor is for your school, or your high school teachers or case managers should be able to connect you with the correct DVR counselor as well. So, we're happy to meet with you prior to applying for services to, share more information, answer any questions that you have, and just provide some general, consultation related to employment planning and things like that. So to be eligible for services, you'd have to have a documented disability. Your disability has to create barriers to employment, and you have to require our services. So once we get that application, we would schedule an intake meeting with you and the student or the rest of their support team to gather the information we need to determine eligibility. So we would ask you some questions about what types of things you might need assistance with at work, or what types of things might be harder for you with working. We would also sign releases for obtaining the documentation that we need to move forward with your eligibility. So a lot of times your IEP with the high school has information that we can use to determine if someone qualifies for services. We can also sign releases for any other, doctors, therapists, other medical providers that you would want us to request information from. And if a student is under 18, or if they're over 18 and have a legal guardian, we do need the guardian to be involved in that process as well, for them to kind of give us permission to move forward with the application and releases and things like that. The other thing that we determine when we determine if someone is eligible for services is what we call our order of selection category, or OOS. Basically, DVR is required to serve the individuals with the most significant disabilities first. So in order to make sure that we're able to do that, we have 3 different categories that we place people into. And the way that we determine someone's category is we look at 7 different functional areas. So when we meet to do that intake appointment, we would ask questions about the student's limitations related to their mobility, their communication skills, their self-care, self-direction, interpersonal skills, work tolerance, and work skills. And then the number of areas that they have barriers or limitations in helps us determine their category. So individuals with barriers in 4 or more of those 7 areas would be in our category 1. Category 2 is individuals that have barriers in 1 to 3 of those areas. And then category 3 would be individuals who don't have significant barriers in any of those areas. And then just depending on how many people are applying for our services, there at times could be a wait list for some of those categories. Right now, we do not have a wait list for categories 1 or 2. So if a student is applying for services and they have a barrier in at least one of those 7 areas, they would not be on a wait list right now. Once someone is found eligible for services, then we move into more of like the planning process. So we would meet with you guys again to write an individualized plan for employment, or IPE. And that's the plan with DVR that's going to outline what the students, employment goals are, what services they need from DVR, and then some progress measures and responsibilities to help make sure that we are, moving forward and making progress towards that goal. Our services are very individualized, so the services that one student receives from DVR might look different than the services that another student receives from DVR. It's all, going to be dependent on each student's individual disability-related needs, their employment goals, and what types of services are necessary. So some of the common services that we might be providing for high school students, we have what we call pre-employment transition services. So that could be things like general assistance with, you know, gaining some basic work skills and experiences, kind of helping, you know, students start those first jobs and learning what it means to be a good employee, learning some of those good work skills to help them, you know, advance to other jobs in the future. It could be things related to career exploration and helping them learn more about what types of jobs might be a good fit for them. Um, Things like work experience, maybe we're like assessing an employment goal and kind of seeing what's a good fit, what type of supports that do they need to be successful at work. Other services through DVR, we can provide things like benefits counseling. So for students receiving Social Security benefits, you know, helping you guys meet with someone who can explain more about how work earnings could impact benefits either in or after high school. We can help with the actual job search process and obtaining a job. And then for students who will need supported employment services or will need ongoing supports after high school, we can help with that process as well. So typically DVR provides the funding for sort of those initial job supports as a student is learning a new job, things like that. And then once the job is stable and we've faded back their support needs as much as we, you know, anticipate that we're going to be able to, then we'll work with your team to identify a timeline for transitioning to your long-term support funding. So IRIS or family care, things like that. So those are some of the more common examples of services, but again, it's really very individualized. So that will, you know, be different for each student just depending on their needs. DVR's end goal is always competitive integrated employment. So that's our ultimate goal with DVR. Once someone is out of high school and they're in a job that is meeting, you know, kind of those post high school employment goals, that's when we would, you know, potentially start talking about case closure. So once a student has maintained that job for at least 90 days, that's when we would talk about, you know, is this job going well? Is it meeting your needs? Are there any additional services that you need from us? And, you know, if there's not anything else that we need, we would close their file successfully. So that's what, you know, kind of allows us to continue working with the individuals that are applying for services. For supported employment, that 90 days for case closure would start not from the start of the job, but instead it starts from when we transitioned to your long-term support funding. So even after DVR stops the funding for those job supports and IRIS or family care are now doing that, we stay involved just to make sure that after our services ended, that the job continues to go well and that there are no additional concerns or services needed. Individuals can always come back to DVR, so there's no limit on how many times someone can utilize our services. So at any point in the future, after someone's case is closed, you know, if their situation changes where maybe the job that they're in is no longer a good fit, or they, you know, maybe have just been there a while and they're ready to, they have the skills now to advance to something new, they're ready for a new employment goal, you can reapply for DVR services at any time. And then we would start a new plan for employment, you know, and identify at that time what are your employment goals and what services are needed. We also have what's called post-employment services. So when someone's file is closed because they're working somewhere, if something changes with that job, like say they have some new job duties that they need to learn, or maybe something changes to their disability where, you know, something that wasn't an issue before, maybe now is a barrier, and they just need like a short-term service from DVR to help them maintain that job. You can contact DVR to see if we can reopen your file in post-employment services, so that we can provide that, you know, one short-term service to help you maintain the job and kind of get back on track with that. Some other things, just sort of, you know, in general, working with transition services, definitely, we always recommend, you know, invite DVR to IEP meetings. We can attend IEP meetings, for students, even if they haven't applied for DVR services yet. So that's a really good opportunity for us to just, provide more information about DVR and provide that employment planning consultation to the team. We typically have days that, with the high school where we're scheduled to actually be at the high school and available to meet with students. So that looks a little bit different this year just because of COVID. But we're definitely still available, to schedule check-in meetings with students or to schedule meetings, for students that just want to learn more about DVR, things like that. So any questions?
Yes, Kristen, this is Tim. We do have a question in the chat. If a person is assisted by DVR in developing their own small business, what earnings levels and reporting requirements are needed by DVR? And how long does DVR maintain these requirements?
That is a good question. So the earnings level, we would want to make sure that individual is still earning a competitive wage for the hours that they're putting into that business. So we would want to make sure that, they're earning at least minimum wage based on the number of hours that they're spending working. I'm not sure actually what documentation is needed. There's a couple other counselors in my office that work with self-employment cases more regularly than I do. So I don't have an answer for what specific documentation is needed, but that's something that, I can check into, or there should be information about that on our website.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. Do you know what happens if they don't meet the minimal earnings requirements, or do you have someone that maybe has a better, this seems very specialized. So in other words, I have no idea what they're talking about. So if you understand what they're talking about, you are so far ahead of me, Kristen.
So I mean, related to self-employment, if someone is not kind of earning the minimum requirements for their self-employment, it might be that we just follow along for a longer period of time. So I believe that we would want to see like 3 consecutive months of earning that like competitive wage. So I think sometimes for some businesses we might just be following along for longer to meet that time. I don't know if there is a specific time limit that like after a certain amount of time we would need to stop services or come up with a new plan. So I'm not 100% sure on that, but.
Thank you. Another question we have is, what kind of employment is typical with DVR? So what sort of jobs is DVR helping our students with disabilities find?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We really see like all sorts of different types of jobs. So since it is so individualized, it really depends on what that individual's goals are and like what is going to be a good fit for them. So there's not necessarily a specific type of job that we're required to help you find. We do need to look into or make sure that the jobs that we're helping you with are realistic and appropriate. So they need to be like available in the labor market and things that are going to be a good fit for that student. But we really see all sorts of things. I would say that for students, while they're still in high school, a lot of times it's just kind of the jobs that most high school students would have. So working at a grocery store or in a food service position or retail environments or things like that any high school student, like that's the types of jobs that they are likely to be getting. So those are probably the most common for students. But again, it really just varies based on, those individual goals and what's going to be a good fit.
At this point, I don't see any other questions in the chat box. If somebody has a question, would like to unmute, we can definitely handle that, or any questions in the chat box, or we can also move along, but we'll give you just a couple of minutes here. I just really liked, Kristen, the fact that you brought up the fact that when invited, DVR can attend IEP meetings, even if the student is not enrolled with DVR yet. I just think that's really important for families and everybody to realize, is that that help is there, and that there can be employment goals written into the IEP, and those goals can then be supported by the work of DVR.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of overlap between like what schools are able to provide related to some of these employment related services and what DVR is able to provide. So being at those IEP meetings really gives us a good opportunity to talk more about how are we going to be coordinating those things, so that ideally we're working together towards those same employment goals.
And is there an age limit for DVR services?
So 14 is the youngest that a student can apply for services. There's no maximum age limit, so we work with adults of all ages.
And then does DVR support post-secondary education?
Potentially. So if post-secondary training is something that is necessary for that student's employment goal with DVR, then that could be one of the services on their plan.
So it all depends on the plan and what the student is working on.
Yes.
And I see, well, that's very nice that it's individualized. Thank you very much for that. My son appreciates that. Nancy, did you have a question?
I just had a comment that my son is now 42, and I was trying to be very proactive. And when he was 13, I took him to a DVR office to talk to them. And the first thing out of the guy's mouth was, "Why are you here? Your kid is too young." The second thing out of his mouth, when I pushed him a little bit, was I said, "I just wanted some advice about what I should do." And the advice he gave me, which turned out to be very helpful, was try to get this kid a job as soon as you can, no matter what it is, so that he is reporting to someone else. Because one of the things that is hard for people, especially on the autism spectrum, to realize is that when you're working for someone else, you are helping them solve their problems. And that's something that's difficult for them to wrap their head around.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great point, Nancy. So, and I assume DVR will work with, helping that transition. And that's where, the job coaching comes in that we heard from Cassie earlier. Any other questions for DVR at this point? I'm sure she'll be here until 7:30, so feel free to think of them and we can get to them at the end. But Melissa, if you want to move us along to the next part of the program.
Yes, Sarah. Sarah Bass is here to talk about vocational programs and what piece they play in the puzzle to get students working.
Thanks, Melissa. This is Sarah Bass. Hi, I'm Sarah Bass from Pathways of Wisconsin. We are a nonprofit vocational agency located in downtown Madison, Wisconsin. And right now we're serving about 35 people with some form of disability or intellectual disability, maintain their job, or we're helping find jobs. We also offer day services. So we have a facility-based day service and a community-based day service that we provide. And it gives a number of opportunities to, like Cassie had explained, to kind of explore their community and learn some skills, learn some money management, things like that with community-based. Right now, we also have some state contracts that help with a resume builder. We have a couple of state contracts within the Department of Workforce and one with the Department of Health Services. So it's kind of a nice thing that we have going at Pathways. Some other agencies don't have that. And we're lucky to have enough of that support in Madison. Some things that vocational agencies do are, well, there are many in Dane County. I am one of many in Wisconsin, and we're all different. In Madison, we have a group called the Supportive Employment Provider Coalition, and we work well together to find placement and help with placements for kids transitioning out of high school, adults transitioning. And so we work together well in Dane County, but I'm sure there are other groups around the state of Wisconsin similar to what we have set up in Dane County. And we're all a little different. We provide vocational and job development and day services and facility-based day services. And I can go into more detail if other people have questions about the day services, but I really just wanted to talk about vocational today. So we provide long-term support for people that are at their jobs. So either they are coming to us without a job and we help find jobs within the community for either 2 hours a week or 20 hours a week, or sometimes 40 hours a week. It depends on the individual. We're very individualized. And we provide then ongoing long-term support. So outside of the transition from DVR and the transition coordinators from the school, we then carry on that long-term care support. The transition period for us is either, I don't know, sometimes it's only a month or two, but sometimes it carries on for about a year in some cases. So it really depends, again, on the individual, how much training we need to transfer the services over to us or find that individual a job. Once we find someone a job, we either stay with them full time, so how many hours they're working, or like in Cassie's situation, she is working 4 hours and we're only now supporting her for 1 hour. And so she's grown so much in her role there and is able to work on her own that we can fade away. And that is our ultimate goal, is that we fade away and allow people to do their job without someone there supporting. But that can look a lot of different ways. So we have some individuals that are supported like 15 minutes a week, where we just come in and we say, hey, how's it going? Do you have any issues? And we talk with managers and review job duties. If anything changed, maybe we would add more hours on at that point, but it's really flexible to the individual. And then some people work 3 hours and we're there right by their side the whole 3 hours, helping, some hand over hand maybe needed, or just some prompts throughout the day. So it really depends on the job and the individual of how much support we actually give. An example of an individual that we support is, well, there's two people that we support at the same restaurant, and one of them stocks the food and helps with cleaning, and the other one helps with cleaning the bathrooms. And so with one, we are just checking in. We're saying, hey, how's it going? Do you have any issues? And then he's got like a strict like check off list, and we just make sure that he's checking off the things that he needs to check off, and then we're out of there. And if any job changes happen, we talked with the managers and are that go between management sometimes and the individuals that we serve. Others were there for the entire time, like I said, and we really support the individuals with every step of the way, going with reminders. Checklists are important, or just check-ins. Okay, what's the next step? So I mean, it varies on our role from place to place. Some of the job sites are group settings, and some of them are individual. So it depends on what you find, what is available, what jobs individuals like, if they want to be social, if they don't want to be social, if they want that distance from other people, or if they don't mind a group setting. There's lots of different variety out there for sure. I also wanted to talk about funding, and there are many different types of funding once you get into long-term care. The MCOs, managed care organizations. In Dane County here, we have My Choice Wisconsin, and then we also have community care, but there's others around the state. Inclusa comes to mind. So there's different MCOs. There's also different IRIS providers as well. So here in Dane County, we work with TMG or Progressive Community Services or First Person. There's a number of them. There's about, I don't know, 8 or so IRIS providers. So that is the transition between DVR. So DVR funds our services until we transition to long-term care. And then we are then reimbursed by the MCOs and the IRIS reimbursements for the remainder of long-term care funding.
So Sarah, we do have a question.
Yeah.
It's a question about like, how does the vocational agency work with DVR? Who helps find jobs for the clients? Does DVR find the job and then you help them on the job, or what's that intersection like?
Sure. Well, we're a service provider for DVR. And so when the individual is working with DVR, they have a list of providers that provide services for DVR. And so they talk about all the different providers that are available. And if Pathways is available, and we don't have a waiting list, because right now, sometimes individuals have or agencies have waiting lists because there's a lot of people that don't have jobs currently. So if an agency is willing to talk with the families, and the families are interested in the providers, then they can make those connections.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I also have some tips for when you're choosing an agency. I would really encourage you to talk about the funding sources. So if you do choose to do an MCO over IRIS or however you choose your long-term care. Some providers don't have contracts with MCOs. Some don't have contracts with some IRIS providers. So you just have to know kind of what your funding source is and what providers take what funding sources. Another tip would be the location served. So there, like I said, there's a number of different providers in the Madison area. Some only provide services in Madison proper, and then others provide services outside of Madison in the surrounding communities. And so there's a good mixture. There's plenty of providers that provide services throughout Dane County, but that's something to look at too, is where they actually provide services. Now we're located downtown Madison, but we have supportive employment sites throughout Madison, on the west side, in Waunakee, all areas of Dane County. Let me see what else. I have some notes here so I wouldn't forget anything. I would recommend too to take a tour. So if you can take a tour, if you're looking for maybe some wraparound services like day services or facility-based day services, meaning if your individual or son or daughter has a job 2 hours of the day, but then they would like other community-based services, have a tour of their facility, talk with the staff that work there, just get a sense of who you're really working with, and if your personalities mesh, because you will be working a lot with that individual, a lot of meetings, a lot of transition work to be done. So, and then also talk to your DVR counselor or the high school transition coordinator, because a lot of times they know the providers well in your area. So they know who works in certain areas or who've worked well with different personalities. They can really give you some more tips and kind of get you into knowing more of what's in your area. I think that's it. Nancy, did you have a question? Oh, no. Okay.
So if you have any questions for Sarah or Kristen, please feel free to put them into the chat box.
We also come to IEP meetings when the transition's happening, or if you've decided on a different or on a provider, and we're that provider, we would start coming to those meetings and getting to know the individual before we actually go to their work site or start looking for jobs with them.
And there's no problem with the student continuing with whatever agency that they associate with while they're in high school. They'll be able to continue with that agency out of high school, right? Or am I?
Yes. Yep. And they could choose a different agency.
Sure.
There's many different agencies, and if something doesn't feel right, then there's other agencies that might fit the bill or might feel better.
Sarah, is any of that affected by IRIS and family care funding? So if a student in high school had services through an agency, could that possibly change if they don't have?
Yes, I mean, there are some agencies that help with job development, but then don't do long-term care. There are agencies that only provide services for IRIS and not MCOs. So that's a tip that I'd like to share, is making sure that if you want to just have one provider and not and go through the whole transition into long-term care with one provider, that might be an ideal situation. And so I would make sure they're clear about what funding sources they take before you make any commitment, if that's important to you. Some people choose to work with one agency, and then once they lose their job or something happens, then they try a different agency. And so we see a lot of the same people in the Madison area. We serve a lot of the same people.
Yeah, we're lucky in Dane County because there's a lot of options.
Yes,
And I'm
there
sure
is.
once you get farther north or in more rural areas, your options become much more limited.
Right.
Does anybody else have any other questions for Sarah or Kristen?
We have a question. Do you think it's better to wait until the student is 18 and use the support from ADRC, or get them involved in employment beforehand, I think is the question.
Yeah, I mean, I think, from a DVR perspective, I think getting involved in employment prior to that is definitely beneficial. There's not necessarily a need to wait until the student is 18 and connected to the ADRC. Again, depending on their sort of individualized needs, that might be appropriate. But in general, I would say that, if the student is ready and, wanting to start employment related services prior to that, there's no reason to wait for that to be in place.
Thank you. Any other questions or experiences people would like to share? We have a few minutes left.
I have a question. This is Nancy Aylar. There was when my son was looking for a job, there was a huge struggle because he had really good skills in math, for example, but very much difficulty communicating. And even with the help of DVR, we had a lot of difficulty finding a job that worked for him. And ultimately, he ended up working as a page in the library, even though that did not take any advantage of his ability to do calculus, for example. Is there any advice you can give to people who are working with people on the autism spectrum, who often have this situation where people have extremely good skills in some areas and extremely challenging things in social and other types of important job areas?
I think it's important to be creative. So when you're looking for an agency, talk about that and talk about your experience, and see if they have any ideas. Or sometimes agencies have a list of employers that they're already working with, and that could maybe develop a job or fit in to a job that maybe is half of the position. So just thinking out of the box and using their creative juices.
This is Megan Atchison. I'm with TMG. I'm the employment coordinator there. And one thing I just wanted to add to Sarah's comment is to utilize all your contacts in your own networks, whether it be your neighbors, your friends, your church groups, your own, parents, employers, or so. Those are the people that that are going to know about the person who's looking for a job. Utilize as many people as you can when it comes to looking for a job, because you may be just conversing with somebody one day and they're like, oh, I know somebody who's looking for something just that type of specific. So, share your story and let the people that help you too, along with your service provider, who is, obviously a great help.
May I ask a question?
Go ahead, Carrie.
Close to the end of the time. I just sort of want to summarize my understanding, if you don't mind. My son, being 15, was just approved for DVR services, and I've picked up on some things here that I didn't maybe understand before. So he now has this plan in place, and it includes some different things with like vocational types of resources. Am I hearing that these vocational resources are sort of outsourced by some of these other people who are here presenting tonight? And so it's funding for these resources that are done by other places, perhaps. Am I understanding that right? It's not all done by DVR people. They're funding other organizations to provide those services, correct?
Yes, that
Correct.
is correct. There may be some services that DVR is providing directly. So some of that more like vocational counseling and guidance, and that employment planning consultation, and things like that we might be providing directly. But a lot of the services are with our like approved service providers. So agencies like Pathways or other job development agencies, they'll be the ones that are actually at the job site, doing the job coaching, helping to find the job, things like that.
And we do have a couple other questions that we can get to. Well, I know we may run a little bit over, but this is important stuff. One is that services sound county specific. My son goes to school in one county. We live in another county. The question is, does this complicate things? My question is, how does this complicate things? Because it sounds to me like it probably does.
I would say that, in terms of DVR services, things from the standpoint of being able to coordinate services. Like I was saying, there's a lot of overlap between what the school is providing and what DVR or agencies like Pathways are providing. So if we're not all in the same area, that just gets a little bit more complicated. And I have worked with students that live in Dane County, but attend a school in a different county. So the other kind of consideration that comes up is, where are they going to be looking for a job? So, you're at school in this area, but maybe, you come home on the weekends to this area, like where should we be focusing services? Like realistically, where are you going to be looking for employment? I think that that's a really big question to answer. And then that might help kind of direct how we coordinate the rest of the service.
Also, the long-term support funding is statewide. So you don't need to worry as much about that being in different counties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a good point. So DVR is also statewide. So we can transfer cases between offices within the state. So if someone, starts in the Dane County area and then ends up moving to, or decides that it makes more sense to receive services in a different county, we can transfer that file. Like you wouldn't need to start over completely in another county in the state.
Another question that we have is that, should people apply for DVR through the DVR website or do it through school? Which is more efficient or better, or what should they do?
Either way is fine. So whatever you are most comfortable with, if you know that, you, want to apply for DVR services and you feel comfortable filling out that online referral form, that's great. Sometimes we, might meet with a student or their family that just has a lot more questions about DVR, like maybe they're not sure if it's the right time to apply, or they have questions about services or the process. So then, in those cases, it's more common that their case manager at the school helps with coordinating a meeting, and then we all kind of decide at that meeting if they want to move forward with applying at that time or not. But you certainly can, if you're able and ready to fill it out online, that's great as well.
And then I think a question for, I guess Megan and Sarah and Melissa and Kristen and anybody else who wants to put it in the chat. Any ideas for jobs we can create at the high school that offer work learning opportunities besides the coffee cart that's going on at this high school, which they absolutely positively love, so they don't want to get rid of the coffee cart. But what other sort of ideas have you seen out there that can help be created at high schools? And again, anybody can put your ideas into the chat box if you want.
Cleaning jobs are great. They are in high demand. So there's a lot of individuals that are supported, employed, that have cleaning jobs. Filing, if there's any filing that needs to be done, any sorting, those are also in high demand. We do a lot of collating at Pathways. So individuals putting pieces of paper together and into a folder, or we do a lot of that work for the Department of Health Services. So that's a definite need right there, is any filing or any administrative work.
I'd like to add a comment. My son started out his library career working in the library in high school. And that was a quiet place, and he memorized the Dewey Decimal System in a flash. And so it was a good place, and it ultimately did end up where he has a job now based on his library experience. And another person I know has a job doing all of the shredding for places. And you could organize, I mentioned in the chat, maybe some people don't see the chat. I know quite a few people on the spectrum that are really amazing at technology in all its forms. And I think if you had a group of people organized, that you could act as a consulting tech support organization, especially for teachers who don't understand their cell phones, that type of thing. Charging an hourly wage for help in any kind of tech support, or even if you need audio visual assistance with stuff going on in the school. There's lots of times where I've given presentations where audio visual stuff goes clunk and the people on the spectrum fix it. So I think that would be an interesting, almost like a club you could organize in high school to do tech support for people of all ages and races and whatever.
That's a great idea.
So Kristen, looking at work learning opportunities at within a school, am I correct that DVR supports more jobs that are permanent paid employment? Would you support, I know OJT has to be an on-the-job training, needs to be a open position, right? But would you support a work, I don't remember that acronym. The other kind of training.
Are you talking about specifically within the school building?
Yes. If it is not, if it's seen more of like a student internship versus a paid employment.
Are you referring to maybe a work experience also? Where they could,
So that would probably be, yeah, can set up temporary work experiences, which are sort of like paid internships for students to try out a job. So looking at those specifically within the school building, that would probably be determined on a case-by-case basis, and things like that. For the, the jobs that we're setting up for those are jobs that are paid, integrated employment. So depending on what job they're doing within the school, if it's something that students or volunteers or things like that, we can't pay someone for those types of jobs. So it would depend, I think, on the specific of what the job is and why that meets the needs of that particular student.
Okay.
All right. Thank you both very much, everybody, for participating. Actually, Melissa, do you have anything for closing?
Just to make sure and fill out the survey that Tim has put in the comments, and then it also will get emailed to you along with the presentation tomorrow. Everything will be up on the website tomorrow. This presentation, or in the next several.
Come on, Melissa. I don't know what my schedule's like tomorrow yet. I will do my best to get it up there tomorrow, but please don't promise them tomorrow. Oh my gosh, my heart, Melissa.
In the next month,
Thank you.
the presentations will be posted on the website. And along with the past presentations and the resources on the Children and Youth with Special Healthcare Needs website, I will pull up here. I'm going to share with everybody the upcoming trainings one more time. So you can see as you're heading out for the night, and make sure and put them in your calendar. You can register for all of the sessions at one time. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to stop the recording now. Hope everybody has a great night. Thanks so much for being here.